You're listening to Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. Among the flurry of executive orders President Trump signed in his first days back in the Oval Office, rolling back DEI initiatives in the federal government. It's a tactic Floridians are familiar with. Governor Ron DeSantis waged a war on woke over the past couple of years, targeting diversity, equity and inclusion efforts in schools and workplaces. But now big businesses like Target are scaling back their DEI programs. Some people are calling for a boycott of brands that walk back DEI commitments, but other smaller business owners who rely on big brands to get their products in front of shoppers say that will hurt them. Here's April Showers, CEO of Afro Unicorn, talking with NPR's Michelle Martin last week.
And I hate the fact that we are fighting about how to support Black businesses. We have a man in leadership who has this attack on words like diversity, equity, and inclusion. So many people are missing that. Why do people even care so strongly and passionately that we should not be diverse, there should not be equity, and there should not be any inclusion?
The battle over DEI and the ripple effects on shoppers and businesses comes as Black History Month gets underway. Coming up in about 15 minutes, you'll hear about an effort to connect people with Black businesses throughout Tampa Bay. The Green Book of Tampa Bay nods to the 20th Century Guide for Black travelers that help them navigate the segregated South in safety. The Green Book of Tampa Bay started as an online business directory, but as you'll hear, co-founder Hilary Van Dyke has grown it into much more. But first, for insights into the opportunities and challenges facing Black business owners in Tampa Bay, here's Nicole Payne. Nicole, thanks for joining us. Now, you're the president of the Hillsborough County Black Chamber of Commerce. What are some of the businesses among your membership?
Well, we have, and thank you for inviting me, and I'm happy to be here. We have a wide variety of business owners. They range from small solopreneurs in business by themselves, having from janitorial businesses to real estate to multimedia companies, merchandise, plumbing, mechanics, software, security software. All different kinds of businesses are represented in the Hillsborough County Black Chamber.
And I think I was reading on the website that you're one of the newest chambers of commerce around.
Yes. Yeah, there are approximately 26 or so different chamber of commerces in the Tampa Bay area. And we are about one of five or six Black chambers. So we're one of the newest ones. We formed just under 2 years ago and began accepting memberships about 18 months ago. So we have been very aggressively building out our chamber, uniting businesses with opportunities to network for funding, education, and so forth. As a matter of fact, the word Black in the Black Chamber is actually an acronym, and it stands for Business Leaders Acquiring Capital and Knowledge.
So why the need for this chamber? Because you obviously saw a niche there and you're like, we need to move on this. What was the gap?
That's always an interesting question, right? Because there are Hispanic chambers, Latin chambers, Haitian chambers, Jewish chambers, Italian chambers, and so forth. And the Black chambers are probably the ones that do get asked that question, why need a Black chamber? Because there's no white chambers, right? However, when you join some organizations, you may not feel that organization is a fit for you, your lifestyle, your goals. The leadership, the culture of the organization may not fit your best interests. They may not even think that they need to fit your interests. And so many Black-owned businesses feel comfortable congregating amongst themselves because we know that we have each other's best interests in mind when it comes to acquiring capital and knowledge and sharing of resources.
Now, you own a lending and financial services company, and I think that's just one of the businesses you own. So Tell me a little bit about your personal business story. How did you get started, and what were some of the challenges you faced along the way?
So I own Kenneco Investments, LLC, with my husband. We help small business owners with business lending, as well as we do mortgages, commercial, and residential. I got started in finance quite some time ago. It started with my own journey as a single mom to purchase a home for my children. And I had a lot of roadblocks, and there were some things that I didn't know that I needed to know. And along the way, I felt that there were people that didn't have my best interests in mind, and I was being taken advantage of. And so I committed to learning everything I can about finance and home ownership. And once I did, my mind just expanded and exploded. And I wanted to go back and help other people. I wanted to teach other people about finance. So I got into lending and eventually made my way into mortgage lending, where I had the bulk of my financial career in mortgages, and then went into real estate investing and fixing and flipping and so forth. So when I moved here to the Tampa Bay area about 8 years ago, I wanted to restart that in this town. And so that's what we have been doing, is connecting resources, helping people. And I do a lot of consulting because there's a lot of business owners that aren't ready for that next step for lending. Many people come to us and they want grants that they don't have to pay back, or they want a loan that they don't have to put any seed money into. And really, essentially, they're looking for angel investors because they've heard that, there are people willing to invest if you have a great idea. And when it comes to Black-owned businesses, there are less resources available, mainly because there are less people that believe in your business idea. So we're giving a lot more hurdles to jump over when you're a Black-owned business. And there's a lot of statistics out there that show that Black-owned businesses get less funding, even in terms of grants and venture capital and so forth. So being able to help the community with resources is something that I'm passionate about, because I treat people like I would have wanted to be treated when I was in their situation.
Now, thinking about that, so there is currently, I guess, an erosion of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in the federal government. We're seeing that at the state level as well. And now you're seeing corporations kind of walk back from things that they'd put in place because it seemed like a good idea or they could see a market for it. So what difference does it make, first of all, when a big corporation has an explicit DEI strategy?
Yeah. So, it's unfortunate that we're here because we haven't reached equality, essentially, in America. And we haven't done a good job of explaining why those things were in place in the first place. And, we hear arguments like, oh, well, it's reverse racism. And still, collectively, Black wealth pales in comparison to white wealth. The opportunities are just not there, essentially because we're not invested in, we're not believed in, and so forth. We don't get the benefit of the doubt that our white peers or Asian peers or even Hispanic peers get.
Is the belief component of that one of the biggest challenges? Because you're talking about the fact that, when you're talking about access to capital for businesses or even getting a home loan and facing, higher interest rates, you come up against people who say, no, that's not happening. So how do you convince people that it is happening if they don't believe it?
Yeah. So sometimes people have to see it with their own eyes, before they believe it. And that is either with friendships, right? And if you're an ally to Blacks and Hispanics and you're witnessing it firsthand, then you become a believer. But it also doesn't take much for you to look at the studies that are done on racial inequality, wealth gaps, and so forth for you to know that it is happening. And so, here in this country, we're finding ourselves in a time where we're trying to dial back those things, and equality hasn't been met.
So when you have a big corporation like, say, a Target, having a strategy to say we are going to invite more Black-owned businesses to stock their products on our shelves, does that make a difference?
Yes, it makes a difference, because it says that we see you, we believe in you, and we understand that you have been marginalized and you've been held back. We understand that, after slavery and the Reconstruction, that you all were trying to build your own communities, and because of the white supremacists and the KKK organizations that existed then, burned down your businesses and your towns, and you weren't able to pass on generational wealth. Because of all of those things, we want to make sure that we invest invite you to the table. We're inviting you in the room. You have a good product. You have something that I believe would be of value to our customers. So place your things here on the shelf, and we're not going to deny you this ability because you are Black or otherwise, but we're going to approve you into the greater conversation. And that's what we need more of the conversation to be focused on, not that this is somehow reverse discrimination, but to understand why it started in the first place is because we're not in the rooms, we're not at the tables when we actually should be, because if we have a valuable product or service, we should be able to be amongst our peers to say, hey, competition of course is good. And if my product is just as good as yours, then let me be on the shelves as well.
So what do you think you can do to help businesses in your organization navigate some of these challenges ahead?
Well, one is giving them the knowledge. There are a lot of folks that come to me that don't have the basic knowledge of business organization structure, their bank accounts. They need some help. It's not enough just to have a great idea, right? You have to be able to know how to execute that idea and maintain that business or services that you do offer. So we're heavy into the knowledge piece at the chamber. We have workshops, and as far as being one of the fastest growing chambers in Tampa, we have in 18 months educated over 1,000 people who have come through our events and our workshops and our seminars, given them the knowledge to help build upon what they're trying to do. So we tell people, come where you are and let us help you get to the next level in your business. So developing partnerships and even networking with other chambers, because we do say, it's one of our core tenets is that at the bottom you compete, but at the top you collaborate.
Well, Nicole Payne is the president of the Hillsborough County Black Chamber of Commerce. Nicole, thank you so much for your insights. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're listening to Florida Matters. Up next, how the Green Book of Tampa Bay helps connect people with Black-owned businesses. You're listening to Florida Matters. I'm Matthew Petty. When Hilary Van Dyke and her friend and fellow teacher Joshua Bean started the Green Book of Tampa Bay, they had a vision. They wanted to increase economic vitality by connecting people with Black-owned businesses in the region. Now, more than 5 years later, and after the pandemic turned life upside down, the Green Book of Tampa Bay has evolved into more than a business directory. Van Dyke is no longer a teacher, but she's still working to connect people and foster economic and cultural vitality in Tampa Bay. Well, Hilary, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you started the Green Book of Tampa Bay to connect people with Black businesses in the area. So what was it that gave you the idea in the first place?
Yeah, so I'm the co-founder of the Green Book of Tampa Bay, and I co-founded it with one of my best friends, Joshua Bean. We were both educators at a middle school in St. Pete. It's a middle school that has a lot of students who come from a lower socioeconomic neighborhood, and there's just a lot of issues that our students were dealing with, and we were really just trying to find a way to try to help improve their circumstances. And after a lot of, failed efforts to become part of different community organizations, we landed on the idea that maybe the goal should be trying to just help increase economic vitality in the Black community in St. Pete. And then it kind of grew into a Tampa Bay thing. And so the idea was just maybe if we get more folks, spending money in Black-owned businesses, we can help kind of spread the wealth so that all Tampa Bay residents have some, equal access to money.
And so how long have you had the site up and running for?
Our first iteration of the Green Book was started in March 2019. So
wow.
What is that? We're going on 6 years, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a couple of questions that come to mind. First of all, you started it when you were a teacher, and I know how busy teachers are, like both you and your co-founder, Josh. How did you find the time?
Yeah, teachers definitely are very busy. What's interesting is we actually, by the time we started it, I think I was out of the classroom by that point. I was a district administrator for the school district. And so by then I had wider access to the fact that it was more than just, the school we worked at. But we still were both very busy educators. And even at that time, we had a lot more time than we have now. And so we just made it a priority. It really started very small. It was really just about having the website. And a lot of what has happened today, we just have kind of grown and grown the work that we do. So now the question is how do I have time now to do it?
I mean, the other thing too is like all of the teachers I know, going back to when I was in school and then just kind of like now is very creative and always kind of looking for ways to try and do more. And schools too, I think public schools especially are kind of like they're more than just a classroom, a place of learning, right? They've become this kind of catch-all resource. Was that sort of part of like what spurred you on to this, that the idea that you were having to do more in your classroom for the kids and their families than just teach the kids?
I would say yes and no. I think it really was kind of just looking at the community and trying to think of how we can help make things a little better in the community. And ultimately, at the end of the day, people having more money in their pockets is going to help everyone. And then we also have that belief that a rising tide lifts all boats. So if we're just helping this group that in every data set you look at, Black folks are economically disadvantaged compared to their counterparts in the area. And so it just was like, how do we have some kind of an impact on that?
Now, people may be familiar with the Green Book from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, and that was a guide for Black people traveling through the segregated South. But Hillary, for people who don't know about it, can you kind of explain what it was and why you wanted to, I guess, evoke that guidebook by naming your site the way you have?
Yeah, so our namesake is Victor Hugo Green's Negro Motorist Travel Guide, also known as the Green Book. And it was started in, I think, the 40s, maybe the 30s, but I'm pretty sure the 40s, to help Black people navigate a Jim Crow America. And with this book, it would let them know, what gas station they were allowed to stop at, maybe where they could stop to eat. Here in St. Pete and Tampa area, what was actually listed was mostly houses and a couple hotels, depending on the year. But for the most part, they would know what part of town they actually could go to and have more options than just that. But really just help Black folks know essentially how far am I going to have to drive before I can stop and do this. And there's always some interesting interviews you can find online about young people who were just kids traveling, and they just thought that's how people traveled, where their parents would load up a cooler with a bunch of food, actually literally have like gas tanks with them. And then now as adults realizing, it's because the Green Book told them how far they'd have to be going. So they had to be prepared to be able to just, drive for a long time. Mm-hmm. And even at some point it had which places you could camp at near some of the national parks. So it wasn't just about gas and restaurants. It was really helping people know where they could go. I think in Alaska there was even one listing of someone's house that you could stay at.
So when people go to the site, are they kind of aware of that, or is there an education component where you're like, okay, you may not be familiar with this, but this is kind of the spirit of what we're doing?
Yes, it does talk about our namesake. And one of the things that's important to remember is the Green Book at that time was literally helping keep Black travelers alive and healthy and safe as they made their way through a very segregated America, but also an America that had literal laws that wouldn't allow them to do those things. Whereas now we evoke that name just with that idea of the community supporting each other. And so even though it's a focus on Black-owned businesses, the point is to encourage residents to be mindful of their spending and trying to spend across everything just to ensure that we all have, access to wealth.
Yeah. So you're welcoming everyone to
Yes.
the site and to the things you do with the Green Book. As you mentioned earlier, it's grown into something more than a business directory, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got quite a lot of things going on through it. There's cultural events. There are other things. What are some of the initiatives that you've started?
We have the directory, of course. We also have our Instagram and Facebook where we will highlight businesses that we've tried out. So that's always the bread and butter of the things that we do. And then We do 2 to 4 business owner mixers throughout the year just to encourage business owners to meet each other, network, and then it's led to some beautiful collaborations. And then we also do a couple annual art shows. One's actually the last Sunday in February at the Straz, and that's called the Black Art Gala, just to highlight local Black artists, visual artists and performance artists. And then we also have an art show in St. Pete at the studio at 620 that stays up all of June, And again, that one's just highlighting visual artists. And so those are 2 of our main events. And then sometimes there might be something else thrown in during the year. And then the newest initiative we have is a artist residency program where we have a studio space at the Warehouse Arts District. And last year it was funded by a grant from Creative Pinellas. This year it's funded by the Gobioff Foundation. And basically we encourage local artists to apply and actually be a part of this residency, where they get to experience what it's like to be an artist that has a studio space, because costs can often be a barrier to being able to have that as part of your journey as an artist.
Mm-hmm. What can you tell me about some of the artists who've gone through that residency so far? Have you kind of tracked their progress afterwards?
Well, so last year was our first year, and we had 2 artists in the first residency in the first half of the year and then 6 in the second half. One of the cool things that we were able to do for the first half is we had a micro exhibit at Art Noir Gallery in Tampa. And so they got to have their own exhibit. And then this December and January, all of the artists who went through the residency last year were in an exhibit that was at the Warehouse Arts District in the Tully Levine Gallery. So I think along with having a studio space, the other thing you want as an artist is to actually be able to exhibit your work. And so these were just these 2 ways that the residency program allowed them to, really show their skills as a professional artist. And then we also had professional development sessions throughout the year from local professional artists, just talking more about the business side of art. Mm-hmm. That there's the creation, of course, but then one of the goals a lot of the time is to sell the art. And so they just learn things from the professional development related to that.
That's interesting because, it sounds like it was a very conscious decision to really try and sort of foster the business side of art. And, to your point, it's a creative endeavor, but you can actually make a living from it. But it can be pretty tricky at the best of times, right?
Yes, for sure. And 2 of the 3 artists actually are full-time practicing artists. And so it was, really cool 2 of the people who led the session. So it was cool just to listen and learn on how they, over the years, were able to kind of make that leap of faith and do that full time.
Right. And that was without something like the Green Book of Tampa Bay to give them that boost along. Yeah,
one of the artists, Catherine Weaver, is based in St. Pete, has been in St. Pete for the majority of her life. And she just talks about how when she kind of came back to St. Pete, how there just was not an artist scene. And so one of the things she loves about Green Book is how much we've helped grow the artist scene, but particularly around getting more Black folks involved in it, because if you're going through most of the galleries and things downtown and in St. Pete is not particularly diverse. And so one of the things we're trying to bring to the space is all perspectives by having more Black folks showing up in that too. And even right now, one of our artists is Afro-Cuban. And so even that, just having not just necessarily a Black perspective, but also this perspective as a Cuban artist as well.
Yeah. Now, just coming back to one of the goals of the Green Book of Tampa Bay, increasing Black economic vitality, one of the focuses, we've talked about the art, but I'm wondering too about the kind of awareness, I guess, of the history of Black businesses in the greater Tampa Bay region. Is that something you're trying to do?
We haven't necessarily been particularly intentional about that. A lot of times when we have, especially our June event, we have these shadow boxes we put up that show replica Green Books and pages from St. Pete and Tampa, and then include some history about what the Green Book is or what the Green Book was and what it is now for us in Tampa Bay. But I would say outside of it being part of the exhibit that we do in June, I don't know that we necessarily have done too much intentionally to, teach people about that history. And one of the things here is it's such a long, vibrant history of Black businesses because of the need to essentially create their own things because they weren't allowed, in downtown St. Pete, for example, to shop there. They could work, but they couldn't buy anything or eat down there. And so you had to create these businesses to have the ability to just, be a human
right.
In the world.
Mm-hmm. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Hilary Van Dyke, co-founder of the Green Book of Tampa Bay. So you've got a lot of kind of plates spinning at the same time, right? It sounds like you're pretty busy, and as you said, you're wondering how do you have time for this all.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about some of the businesses that sort of stick out to you that you've helped, I guess, foster some of their business, or that they've signed up for the Green Book. What sort of sticks out?
I think some of the stories we've told over time, one of my favorites is there's a local massage therapist, Body Rehab by B. And she really attributes, when we did a feature on her, to her getting a lot more popularity and then getting to actually pursue that full time. We have this DJ who also does photography. I'm forgetting. His name is Donald Stokely, and I'm currently forgetting his business name. But through the Green Book, he was able to create a connection with a wedding planner. And so now they just pretty exclusively do weddings together. But one of the ways that they got connected was this wedding planner had a wedding where one person was Black, one person was Asian, I think Filipino, and there was a particular thing that they do at ceremonies. So she was trying to find a DJ and a photographer who understood that, and she found that in Donald because he's biracial and is Filipino, is Black, and understood the particular whatever the custom was, he understood. And along with being able to do right by the photography side of things, he was able to do the music part right too. So it was this beautiful connection that was made because she was able, as a wedding planner, to find him on the Green Book. But yeah, there's lots of stories like that.
How does it feel when you see these connections being made? I imagine that's pretty satisfying.
Yeah, it's definitely pretty satisfying. And I think one thing, we really never ever, we know people are using the directory and using the Facebook to learn about places, but we just almost never hear stories about it. So occasionally when we get to hear a story about whether it's from a business owner or just a real life human using it, it's always very exciting to know that it's not for nothing.
Hilary Van Dyke, co-founder of the Green Book of Tampa Bay, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story.
Thank you.
That's Florida Matters for this week. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and watch on YouTube. Florida Matters executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Engineering support from Jackson Harp, Gio Garvin, and Blake Bass. I'm Matthew Petty. Thank you for listening.